As anyone who's watched the channel or read my blog for long knows, there are three things that are undeniably true. I hate social justice warriors, I love taking quizzes and answering questionnaires, and I detest Buzzfeed. Imagine my joy when I found out that I could combine all three of these in a single video. Now, this isn't anything new, it actually came out in 2014, but I found it floating around out there and figured I just had to take it. They actually made it easy to check your privilege with a quick and simple checklist. Now you can know just how bad to feel about yourself because you're a privileged shitlord. So I'm going to go over every single question and provide some commentary. So let's get started. So we'll start at the top with, I am white. Well, yes I am. That one gets a check mark. Of course, this just assumes that being white makes you automatically privileged, and it doesn't consider any different situations. What if you're white in an almost all-black neighborhood? Are you still privileged? Next, I've never been discriminated against because of my skin color. Well, I absolutely have been. I have been discriminated against and put down by black and Hispanic people on numerous occasions just because I'm white. I think most white people get this from time to time. The same goes for never having been the only person of my race in the room. Well, of course I have. Lots of times. Sometimes by choice, and sometimes not. It never bothers me in any case. So how about, have I been mocked for my accent? Well, sure, if I'm in an area where a different accent is typical, but this has nothing at all to do with privilege. If I were to somehow lose my mind and move to the Deep South, they would almost certainly make fun of my accent there. It doesn't make them better than me. You'd have to be a moron to think that. People tend to mock that which is different. It's basic human behavior. So why are you offended by it? I've never been told I'm attractive for my race. Well, no, I haven't. But then again, I've never said that to anyone else either. I've never heard anyone else saying that. I'm not denying that anyone's ever said it. I just don't find it particularly offensive. People have preferences, and people are allowed to have preferences. I have a really good friend who's white, but he's always been particularly attracted to Asian women. His wife is Japanese. If he saw a white woman that he found attractive and said she was attractive for her race, he wouldn't be insulting her race, he'd be expressing his preference. I always find things like this to be people just looking for offense. I've never been a victim of violence because of my race. Well, that's totally untrue. In fact, growing up, I had a Hispanic friend who lived in what's basically a bad neighborhood. It was almost entirely Hispanic and was filled with Mexican gangs, and I got beat up on more than one occasion because white guys don't belong in their neighborhood. And that's also one of those occasions that I've been called racial slurs. It happens more than people want to admit, but to be real honest, I follow the George Carlin school of thought.
I get tired of people talking about bad words and bad language. Bullshit! It's the context that makes them good or bad. The context that makes them good or bad. For instance, you take the word nigger. There is absolutely nothing wrong with the word nigger in and of itself. It's the racist asshole who's using it that you ought to be concerned about. We don't care when Richard Pryor or Eddie Murphy say it. Why? Because we know they're not racist. They're niggers. Context. Context. We don't mind their context because we know they're black. Hey, I know I'm Whitey, the blue-eyed devil, patio fade, gray boy, honky motherfucker myself. Don't bother my ass.
I've never been told I sound white. Well, sure I have. But I think it's funny the way that Buzzfeed is tilting the results, assuming that anyone taking this survey must be white because only white people can possibly have privilege. In fact, as you go through this, all of the liberal whipping boys are clearly marked. White, male, straight, with money. All the things they hate. But let's go on. A stranger has never asked to touch my hair or asked if it's real. Well, I did check this one in the spirit that it was asked. I have done some stage performance work where I've been in costume and had people ask me that, but it wasn't my real hair, so I'm not going to count it. It just shows that people are curious. There's nothing racist about it. They're just trying to experience new things. If you went to Africa, natives who have little or no experience with white people, well, they'd be doing the same thing. Is that racist? I am heterosexual. Why, yes. Yes, I am. Thanks for asking. That doesn't make me privileged. But the next one, I've never lied about my sexuality? Yes, I have. Or at least I've been non-committal about it. Some people might already know this, but way back when, back in the early to mid-'80s, I kinda ran with the furry community, back before they were a complete clusterfuck, back before the whole thing was about screwing in fursuits and drawing donkey dicks. But the furry community has always been heavily homosexual, and there were certain times when it was at least a bit uncomfortable being the only acknowledged straight guy in the crowd. So I didn't say anything. I didn't deny it, but neither did I affirm it. If asked directly, I said something non-committal. Now, to me, I wasn't offended or anything. It had nothing to do with what we all enjoyed as a group, so I figured talking about it was entirely irrelevant, and when it became relevant, when the whole fandom went to fuck, I left. But yeah, in that sense, I have hidden my sexuality. I never had to come out. Well, I actually shouldn't have checked this, but I'm trying to stay with the spirit of the survey. I'm an atheist. I have had to come out as an atheist, at least to people who used to know me when I was religious. But sexually, no, I didn't, and that's why I checked the box. I've never doubted my parents' acceptance of my sexuality. Nope. But if I had been gay, I wouldn't have doubted it then either. They accept me unconditionally. Back when I told them I was an atheist, they accepted it, even though they were disappointed. Disappointment is not a lack of acceptance. They never tried to convert me or convince me of anything. They just changed their paradigm and moved on. Have I ever been called a fag? Plenty of times. I can't remember ever being called a dyke, though, although that's certainly a possibility, but since I can't recall a specific instance, I did check that box. I've never been called a fairy or any other derogatory slur for homosexuals. This is another example of Buzzfeed trying to slant their results. They've already asked about fag and dyke, two derogatory terms. Now they're going to give you even more chances to show your privilege. They should have just had one catch-all question, not 3 questions that may count against somebody 3 times for the same concept. But of course, since I've been called a fag, even if I hadn't been called anything else in my life, I automatically get a pass on this question. I've never tried to hide my sexuality. Well, I already talked about this one, and it's just another example of double dipping by Buzzfeed. All of these examples of double dipping just show how utterly dishonest this whole survey actually is, but hey, what can you expect from the regressive left? I am always comfortable with public displays of affection with my partner in public. That's a really awkwardly worded statement, isn't it? It's almost like they didn't know what PDA means. This is another question that could have gone either way because of how it's worded. Am I, in general, comfortable with public displays with my partner? Well, it depends on the kinds of displays you're talking about. Holding hands? Sure. Dry humping and shoving my hand down her pants? No! But neither should anyone else, gay or straight. It's a badly worded question all around. I've never pretended to be just friends with my significant other. Well, in fact, I have. Not for sexual reasons, but for racial ones. I had a girlfriend a long time ago who was half Chinese, and my mother, she was raised in a very racist household. That's just how she grew up. That was the time in which she grew up. So while we were definitely seeing each other, we never said so to my mother, at least not at the beginning, because we knew how she'd react. Now, luckily, in the years since, she's realized how wrong she was, and today it wouldn't bother her a bit. But then, yeah, it definitely would have, and so, yes, I have. I have never been ostracized by my religion for my sexual orientation. Well, no, I haven't. I wasn't when I was a Christian, and I'm not today, even though atheism isn't a religion, but most would consider it such for the purposes of this question, so no. I've also never been told I would burn in hell for my sexual orientation. For many other things, yes, but not for my orientation. I've never been told my sexual orientation is just a phase. Well, yes, actually I have. There were some really strenuous bisexuals in the furry community back in the day. They weren't people I ever really hung around with, but they certainly did exist, and I ran into them at conventions and the like, and they were absolutely convinced that being straight, or being gay for that matter, was just a phase and everyone was really bisexual, meaning they wanted you to fuck everything. And yeah, from the same people, I've been threatened because of my sexuality. I've been called a breeder. I've been openly insulted. Whether people like it or not, there are just as many gay assholes as there are straight assholes, and neither of them get a pass in my book. I am a man. Well, last time I checked, yes. I mean, I guess I could be wrong, but from every bit of evidence I have, I've got to answer in the affirmative. I feel comfortable in the gender I was born as. Well, absolutely. But if I was gay, I'd be comfortable that way too. Same as if I was a woman, or black, or Hispanic. Coming to grips with yourself and what you are is part of the basic maturation process. The only person who couldn't check this box is someone who's fundamentally immature. I also identify as the gender I was born with, as though that's something I should somehow be ashamed of. That's kind of silly. But this is another one of those questions that betrays their bias. The only person who can't check this one is someone who's transgender. But gays, they have to check the box too. Are we now saying that being gay is being privileged? I have never tried to change my gender. Nope, but as I said before, I'm comfortable with my gender. Why would wanting to change something about yourself make you less privileged? Are people who color their hair or wear colored contacts somehow less privileged than people who are comfortable with their natural hair and eye color? It really makes no sense. I've never been denied an opportunity because of my gender. Well, really nobody can check this one because nobody ever knows for sure. In the modern day of liberal quotas, I probably have been denied opportunities because of my race, because of my sex, and because of my sexual orientation. They just can't give that as a reason. Doesn't mean it doesn't happen. I make more money than my professional counterparts of a different gender. Well, no I don't. I make as much as I earn. No more, no less. And the same is true of everyone else. The gender wage gap is complete bullshit. It doesn't exist. Can we please give up on this one? I've never felt unsafe because of my gender. Well, it doesn't specify unsafe in what way, but absolutely I have when it comes to radical feminists. Now, I'm not particularly worried you're going to come beat me up, but one of the reasons I don't use my real name online is because all of the doxing and outing and public shaming that goes on, especially coming from the left. I've never been catcalled. Yes, I have. Not only by women, but by gay men. I've never been sexually harassed or assaulted. Well, assaulted, no. Harassed, yes. Again, both by women and gay men. And I'm not even counting the, oh, they looked at me funny, as harassment like so many feminists do. I mean honest to goodness harassment. I have never been raped. Nope. But I'm restricting this to the legitimate definition of rape, not the, I felt uncomfortable so I was raped bullshit that feminists pull. Not the, I changed my mind so I was raped nonsense that we see from the left. Actual physical sexual assault, and no. I work in a salaried job. Well, yes, I do. What does that have to do with privilege? I work with blacks, Hispanics, and Asians, men and women, all of whom are salaried. Please, explain this one to me. My family and I have never lived below the poverty line. Yes, we have. It's been a long time, but we absolutely have lived in poverty. We haven't been able to pay our bills. We struggled to pay rent. This happens to a lot of people when they're starting out. Welcome to reality. I don't have any student loans. Well, no, I don't. I paid for my education completely out of my own pocket. But that said, even if I hadn't, it's been so many years since I was in college that I would have long since paid off my loans anyway. So, is not being young privileged? I don't get it. I have never gone to bed hungry. Sure I have. Everyone has gone to bed hungry at one time or another. This is another question that's really badly phrased. It doesn't say, I've never gone to bed hungry because I had no food. I could go to bed hungry tonight, and I have plenty of food. In fact, just the other day, I had to go for a blood test in the morning, so I went to bed hungry because I had to fast for 12 hours before it. Stupid question. I have never been homeless. Well, no, I haven't. But that's because I work hard, because I live responsibly within my means, and I have reasonable expectations. And I'm willing to bet that anyone who does that, they're not going to be homeless either. Homelessness comes most often from bad decision making. My parents pay none of my bills. Nope, never have, never will. But I'm responsible. It's been more than a quarter century since they paid anything of mine. In fact, even when I lived at home when I was going to college, I paid rent. I don't rely on public transportation. Well, no, I don't. Of course, I live in an area that really doesn't have a good public transportation system, so I couldn't even if I wanted to. And this is another one of those questions that really means nothing. Most people who live in New York City, for example, rely on public transportation, whether they're wealthy or not. Why? Because it's convenient. It's possible. It says nothing at all about privilege. It says everything about where the hell you live. I buy new clothes at least once a month. No, I could. I just don't. I buy it when I need it. I don't if I don't. I've never done my taxes myself. Well, of course I have. Who hasn't? I don't do that today. I've got somebody for that. But when I was younger, I did my own taxes every single year. I've never felt poor. Well, who hasn't? In comparison to Bill Gates, I am poor. In comparison to some of the people I know, I am poor. Feeling poor and being poor, they're two different things. I've never had to worry about making rent. Well, of course I have. Most people do when they're starting out. Really stupid question. I've never worked as a waiter, barista, bartender, or salesperson. Well, yes, I have. Pretty much everybody in my generation got their start working at McDonald's or Target or some other store. In fact, that's where you learn your most basic employment skills. It's where you develop your work ethic. The people who've never worked in a service industry, those people are really not the ones who are privileged. I think those are the ones who are handicapped. I've never had an internship. Well, I've never had one of any kind. I get paid for everything I do. I would never have an internship either, or at least I've never been in a position where it would be in my professional best interest to do so. And I never went to summer camp. I never had any interest in that either. About the closest I ever came was going to vacation Bible school during the day for a week during the summer, and that was a free service offered by my church, so anybody could go. I went to a private school. Yes, I did. My parents scrimped and saved to make sure I could. They weren't rich, but of course a lot of the cost was underwritten by my church, so as long as you were a member in good standing, you got significant discounts on school tuition. And of course, I graduated high school, but that's not a privilege, that's a basic responsibility. Anybody who doesn't graduate high school or go back for a GED is a loser. They're not underprivileged. They don't define what an elite college is, so I really have no idea what they're talking about. Do they mean Ivy League? If so, then very few people do. So, no, I didn't go to an elite college, but I did graduate. Several times. And I paid for it all myself. My parents didn't pay a red cent toward my college education. I worked hard and paid every penny of it out of my own pocket. No loans. Now, this is something I feel very strongly about. I had been working since the day I turned 16 throughout high school. By the time I turned 18, my employer was chomping at the bit to make me management because I was a very hard worker and I was a very fast learner who could be counted on. So all the way through college, I worked full time and I took a full course load. What I didn't do was party. What I didn't do was have a significant social life. I worked, I went to school, and I occasionally slept. That was my life for a number of years. Sometimes I worked my school around my work. Sometimes I worked my work around my school. But my employer wanted to keep me, so they were willing to do whatever it took to make it work. When I got out of school, I had a couple of degrees. I had a job that was nowhere near minimum wage. I had no debt and a bright future. That's how you do it, people. I had a car in high school. Well, yes and no. In fact, I did own a car. I bought it myself. My parents never paid for it. It used to belong to my great-grandmother, and I spent a lot of time fixing it up. I didn't drive it to school. My school had a very small parking lot, and only seniors were allowed to drive to school, and only those who got one of the very few parking permits that they had available. All of the surrounding streets were residential, and the city had passed an ordinance that only residential parking was allowed during school hours. That means if you didn't have a permit, you didn't drive to school, period. I had a regular carpool to school with a senior who did have a permit for a couple bucks a week. Therefore, I'm not going to count this. I never had a roommate. Well, sure I did. I always had cable. Nope. Sometimes I had satellite. Okay, I'm not going to use that just to get out of the question. In fact, right now, I don't have cable or satellite. I can afford it. We just don't watch it enough to justify the cost. So we cut the cable and just don't have it. This is becoming more and more common. They're going to have to reword this question if they want to make it meaningful. I've traveled internationally. Well, yes, I have. I've been to Europe. I've been to Japan a couple times. Obviously, I've been to places like Mexico and Canada, so I have traveled internationally. I haven't done it in quite a while though, mostly because I've got no interest. I also didn't study overseas, again because I had no interest, and at least as far as I remember, there was no program to do that at my school. Even if there had been, I wouldn't have gone, but I don't think that there was. I've never skipped a meal to save money. Well, yeah, I have. Not in a very long time, but I used to do it all the time, especially in college. There were plenty of times I would go to school first thing in the morning and not get out until late in the evening, and never really eat much in the middle. Who in the hell hasn't done that? I don't know what Sallie Mae is. Yes, I do. In fact, following the 2008 financial meltdown, pretty much everyone knows what Sallie Mae is. I spent spring breaks abroad. No, I spent spring breaks working. I spent most summers working unless I was taking summer classes. I worked a lot. Who the hell has time for play? I have frequent flyer miles. Well, not that I know of. I don't go in for any of those reward programs. All those things cost you something, somewhere, either in higher interest, higher fees, etc. I don't have any rewards cards of any kind. My parents are heterosexual. Yeah. In fact, just about everyone's parents had engaged in heterosexual sex. That's how you got here. Unless there was some kind of artificial insemination going on, of course. My parents are both alive. Well, no, my father's dead. It has nothing to do with privilege. In fact, the older you are, the less likely this is true. Are older people somehow less privileged than younger ones? I don't buy it. But because my father is dead, my parents are not married. They were married for 34 years before he died, and if he was still alive, they'd still be married today. But since you can't be married to a corpse, no. I don't have any physical disabilities. Well, since diabetes is considered a disability, yes I do. It doesn't affect me much, but yes, I still have it, so I am still technically disabled. But I have no social, learning, or eating disorders. I'm normal. That doesn't make me privileged. It's just reality, and people need to deal with reality a lot better than they do. Everyone has challenges they need to overcome. Everyone needs to understand that everything in life isn't going to come easily to them. I don't care how much I want to play professional basketball. I'm not 7 feet tall. This doesn't mean that somehow people who are tall are more privileged than me. I've never been depressed. Well, sure I have. Everyone has. This is a stupid question. Absolutely nobody should ever check that box. I've never considered suicide. Yeah, probably in passing I have. Not seriously. I mean, I've got no problem with people who do. In fact, I absolutely support the right of people to commit suicide for any reason whatsoever without being looked on for taking charge of their own lives. If we're going to pretend that people have a right to live, we need to accept that people have a right to die for any reason they want. But no, I haven't actually tried to take my own life. I've just never had a reason. I've never taken medication specifically for mental health. Well, I do take medication for my diabetes, which, if I stop taking it and my blood sugar gets out of whack, can adversely affect my mental state, but it's not there specifically for mental health, so I had to check the box. However, I do think there are far too many people out there who think they deserve to be happy every second of every day and want drugs to make them that way, and I find that pathetic. I can afford medication when I need it. Well, today, yes. It hasn't always been that way. But today with Obamacare, everyone's supposed to have insurance, and everyone's supposed to have access to health care. So this is another one of those things that nobody should ever check. I've never been told I'm overweight or too skinny. Well, yeah, sure I have. By my doctor, in fact. But I've never been technically obese or underweight. But a few pounds overweight, sure. Who hasn't? And of course, when your doctor tells you such things, you're going to start thinking about your weight more and try to change it. I have never been shamed for my body type. Well, define body type. I mean, who hasn't been in high school and felt you weren't getting the cheerleader because you weren't the football jock? Or who hasn't felt they had no chance with the quarterback because they didn't have big boobs? Who hasn't said that if they had the Charles Atlas body, they'd attract girls like a magnet? That's normal. Shaming only really matters if you take it seriously. If you adopt that view personally. I don't. I'm comfortable with myself. I am who I am. If you don't like who I am, take a hike. I don't need you anyhow. This seems to be more of the extremely self-conscious crowd. Likewise, if you look at I consider myself to be physically attractive, I don't even think about it. I don't care. It's totally irrelevant to me. If you think I'm attractive, fine. If not, that's fine too. It doesn't matter to me. The right people will like me, and the people who don't, fuck 'em. I can afford a therapist. Well, yes, I can. I don't need one. I've never needed one, but I can afford one, and under Obamacare, so can you. Everyone needs to check this one, which makes it a pointless question. I've used prescription drugs recreationally. Well, if you mean that for purposes other than what they're intended, no. What's the point? Heck, years ago I had some minor surgery and the doctor gave me Vicodin for the pain. He intended to write me a prescription for 9 pills, and instead he wrote 99 pills, and I had this big bottle of Vicodin sitting in my medicine cabinet for years. I think I took 3 of them. They sat there until they expired and I threw them out. And this plays into the next question. Have I ever had an addiction? No, I have not. I just don't have an addictive personality. There's absolutely nothing in my life that I absolutely have to have or I'll die. There are things I enjoy doing, things I enjoy having, but if I ever had to give them up, I could do it in a heartbeat. That's why I don't drink, I don't smoke, and I don't do drugs. I think the whole thing is stupid. I mean, I used to drink socially back in my late teens and early 20s. Never heavily, but I'd have a beer with friends at a party. Everyone around me was getting smashed, and I was sitting there drinking a wine cooler. The last time I had any real alcohol in my life was just after I turned 21. I had just gotten my new license without the under 21 until sticker, so I went out with a friend from work to a bar where we had a couple of beers, and we watched a couple of dancing girls, and then we left. And that's pretty much the last alcohol I ever had. I mean, whatever excitement there was before I was legal, it was gone. I really didn't care for the taste. I didn't want to be drunk. What the hell was the point? So I don't drink anymore. The last time I had any alcohol at all was at a work conference where there was literally no non-alcoholic beverages available. I know, I looked, so I ended up having a glass of wine because I was thirsty, and I hated it. I have never been shamed for my religious beliefs. Are you kidding? I am constantly shamed for my religious beliefs, or lack thereof. In a heavily religious nation, those who are not of the same religion are going to be doubted, shamed, and hated because you're not part of the same social club. It happens in America. It happens in the Middle East. It happens in Japan. It happens in India. It happens everywhere. Let's not pretend otherwise. In fact, I've been violently threatened because I don't follow the dominant religious paradigm. I had one guy online who was an ardent Catholic who lived near my girlfriend's house, threatened to come over and beat the crap out of me. So I gave him her address and told him to come on over. Right now. Amazingly, he never showed. I knew exactly where he lived, and when I drove by, I waved to him whenever I saw him, and he just went back in the house. Most people who issue threats don't have the balls to carry through on them. Likewise, I've had the religious take swings at me because I don't believe in their gods. They take this as some kind of a personal affront to themselves, and it's just pathetic. Now, this is a pretty stupid question from my perspective because there's no such thing as an atheist place of worship because atheists don't worship anything. But it's still not true. I've never lied about my ethnicity in self-defense. Nope, never have. Well, at least not in self-defense. There was one time way back in grade school where the kids were making all kinds of stupid Polish jokes and accusing people of being Polish. I don't think any of them had the slightest clue what Polish was, but when they accused me of being Polish, I denied it. I had no idea if I was or not. I had no clue where my family came from. I didn't care, and I still don't, even though I know now. But I denied it all the same. But since I wasn't in danger of getting beat up over it, I still had to check the box. I've never lied about my religion in self-defense. Well, absolutely I have. Or, in my case, my lack of religion. There are a lot of people out there who get violently upset that you don't buy into their religious delusions, and I've been in situations where I was drastically outnumbered by people who clearly wanted to get in a fight, where I haven't said that I was an atheist. All of my jobs have been accommodating to my religious practices. Well, I have none, so you'd think that everybody would be accommodating, right? Well, not so fast. I've worked places where the expectation was that you were a Christian, where Christian prayers were openly foisted upon the employees, and the expectation, often unspoken, was that you would participate or be looking for another job. When the work culture includes religious expression, you'd better play along or else. I'm not nervous in airport security lines. Everybody is nervous in airport security lines, not because you've done anything wrong, but because the TSA is just looking for a reason to shove a wand up your ass. Let's not be stupid. And I have been selected for secondary examination. In fact, while my office was getting on the plane to go to the beer swilling work event I already talked about, we all got pulled aside for secondary screening. All of us. And almost all of us getting on the plane were white. You figure that one out. I've never been called a terrorist. Yeah, just tell a fundamentalist Christian that you don't believe in their God and see what that gets you. You get called all kinds of names. And then they try to save you from their imaginary father figure in the sky. I've been cyberbullied for my lack of beliefs. I already told you about that one. But it happens all the time. Literally at least once a week. Fundamentalist Christians are assholes. Fundamentalist Muslims are assholes. If I had a dime for every online death threat I've ever received, I'd be rich. And it happens no matter what age you are. Young, old. So long as you fall outside the norm, you're a target. That's just reality. I've never tried to distance myself from any of my identities. Well, no, not really. Oh, sure, you get the instances where you just can't be open about it, but as far as wanting to change, no. I am who I am, and I don't care who likes it. The right people are going to like me. The people who matter like me how I am. Those that don't like me how I am, they don't matter. And while sure, you get self-conscious and question some of the decisions in your life, and who doesn't, it shouldn't matter what other people think of you most of the time. Be who you are. If they don't like it, fuck them. Who you are doesn't grant you privilege. It doesn't give you special rights or special status. It is who you are, and it's up to you to parlay who you are into something you're happy with. If you're so worried about what everyone else thinks about you, then the problems are yours, not theirs. So, how did I do on this privilege test? Am I privileged or not? Well, no, I'm not. I'm not privileged at all. And guess what? Neither is anyone else. We don't live in an ideal world, and we never will. Everyone learns that the hard way. Welcome to reality. It's nobody's responsibility to educate anyone. Someone please explain that to the left who obviously didn't get the memo. But sure, send them the quiz, and when it turns out they're not privileged either, they can think you're just as big of an idiot as I do. In the end, like most things with Buzzfeed, this was just stupid. The fact is, everyone has their own biases. We are biologically programmed to favor things that are like us and not to favor things that are not. It promotes social cohesion. That means Christians are more likely to promote Christianity over non-Christianity. If you go to the Middle East where Islam is the norm, they're going to promote Islam over non-Islam. White people are going to promote whiteness over non-whiteness. And if you go to Africa where black people are the norm, they're going to promote blackness over non-blackness. This is just the way the world works. Now, you'd hope that this rejection process wouldn't be violent, as it is in the Middle East when it comes to non-Islam, and if that's what you want to fight against, I'm certainly on your side. But to pretend that there should be no biases at all, that's absolutely idiotic. Even the far left have their distinct biases. Feminists hate men, especially straight white men. Yes, they do, and if you don't like it, I can trot out lots of examples of this. But instead of recognizing their own inherent biases, they deny them. We're not biased. You are. No, we all are. It's part of being human. We can control how we react to our biases, but to pretend that we're all completely without sin, that's stupid. We all have preferences. We all have biases. And until we're willing to deal with that fact and be honest about it and worry not about the fact that it exists, but how do we deal with each other, we'll never be able to improve as a species. You're not better than I am. I'm not better than you are. We all need to earn our own way and help others along the path without pointing fingers. So, what about it, liberals? Are you willing to do that? I wouldn't be holding my breath.